All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Council, this evening we have a public hearing to open the meeting, and those that are in attendance as well too. This is a publicized and called public hearing for the purpose of discussion of ordinance number 23-2019. This is the City of Greer budget ordinance for fiscal year 2019 and 20. This is ordinance relating to our fiscal affairs of the City of Greer, South Carolina, making appropriations, therefore levying taxes, and to provide for an effective date. During this public hearing, it is a time for you, as citizens of the city, to speak to items on the contained in the budget, or to offer your opinion, therefore, on such matters as relate to the budget. And we make this time available during the public hearing for you to do so. If you are here this evening to make comment in regards to the public hearing, would you make your intent known by raising your hand, please? Record will indicate that no one showed interest in the first offer to have the opportunity to speak in regards to the public hearing. I will ask a second time, is anyone here this evening to give comment or to thought on ordinance number 23-2019, the City of Greer budget ordinance for fiscal year 2019 through 2020, excuse me. Second offer has been made without recognition of anyone to speak this evening. I will ask a third and final time if anyone would like to speak in public hearing regarding ordinance number 23-2019. No one indicates so, and having asked 3 times, we will call the public meeting to a close. With that, then, we will move to our regular meeting. This is a regularly called and scheduled Greer City Council. I'm all confused this evening. This is a regularly scheduled and called Greer City Council meeting, called and convened this evening, June 25th, 2019. Having duly assembled, I would like to ask, if you would, to please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation for council by Council Member Judy Albert.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, join us if you'd like. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today so thankful for the many blessings that you have shed on each of us. We thank you for the blessings that you've put on our city, and we thank you for sharing your love with us and showing us your way. We pray that we will share your love with others. We also pray for the city and the growth and our employees, dear Lord, that you will protect them. And dear Lord, at this time I come to you for our nation. We have so many perils going on at this time, and we pray, dear Lord, that you will be with our leaders there. We thank you and bless you, and thank you again for loving us and caring for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you for joining us this evening. Having called the meeting to order, we'll move forward with items as listed in the agenda. First item before us this evening is the public forum. Ms. Duncan, do we have anyone to appear in public forum this evening?
No, sir.
With that then, council, I'll entertain a motion to receive the minutes of the council meeting from July 11th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Gilbert?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, contained in your packet as well, too, are the departmental reports. Those reports are there for your review. If you require additional or more information, I am sure the department heads or Mr. Driggers will be glad to assist you in that. We have Susan Howell joining us this evening to bring us our financial activity report for May 2019. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to start out with the general fund. Our year-to-date revenue is $24,727,509. Our year-to-date expenditures are $23,385,711, and that's 2% under budget. Looking at our dashboard, you'll see that we have a positive overall variance of $1,336,765, and we have a $17,911,000 cash balance in the general fund as of May 31st. Moving on to the hospitality fund, our year-to-date revenue is $2,243,000. Our expenditures are $2,241,000, and we have a cash balance of $1,028,259. Finally, the stormwater fund, the year-to-date revenue is $968,000. The expenditures are $661,000, and the cash balance is a little over $890,000.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions or comments? Thank you for the information. We appreciate it. With that, we'll move to the administrator's report. Mr. Driggers.
Thank you, sir. Members of council, you'll notice that we're dressed in our red, white, and blue around the building. So obviously that is as we approach our annual festival, Freedom Blast, which will be taking place this Saturday. It's one of our largest festivals that we have here in the community. All of that takes place here at City Park. So we certainly hope your schedule is going to allow you to join us in the community as we celebrate Freedom Blast and also the members of our military, arms of service, and those veterans that have served us over the years. It's a wonderful opportunity for us as a community to gather. A lot of fun. There is some information in your mailboxes. You'll notice that there's some parking information there for you, as well as other details about Saturday's event. So please make sure that you retrieve that before you leave us this evening. Hope you can join us. One of the things that I do need to make you aware of is the need for us to have a change in our password policy relative to use of email and other access points that we have involving the internet, web surfing, access to sites for the city. And this will apply to all of us. You are probably aware that we are beginning to see exponential increases in attempts to infiltrate our system. This is something that we reported on several months ago. We're starting to monitor that extremely closely. Our IT department feels very strongly that it's time that we're going to have to really up our password protection to try to discourage attempts to get into our system. We literally are experiencing millions of attempts into our system. These are coming from foreign countries. These are coming from sites that we cannot identify. Our software is doing a really good job of catching those and protecting us, but we are continuing to learn daily of communities that are being held hostage for their data, jeopardizing their operations as that data is held ransom. It's becoming a very, very serious issue for us. I have a memo that IT sent out to all of our employees. I'll be sharing that. I'll be forwarding that to you as well. Please know that our IT department will be here to assist because this will apply particularly to any devices that you use relative to entering your City of Greer email sites. And then if there's any other passwords that you use relative to your work and sites related to the city as well. So we're going to need to, we've got to make some changes. We're notifying our folks. These are coming very rapidly for us. We're looking to implement this in the July 1st, so that is next week. We'll have about a 30-day period that we will have to be able to change old passwords to the new configurations of new passwords. We know that this is a This can be very confusing to a lot of our employees, because every single employee in our city is assigned an email address, and they're given a password to access to those. You may be experiencing yourself attempts for phishing exercises. We're having what's called vishing and phishing that's taking place. And again, it's becoming exponential in the amount of attempts that we're getting on a regular basis. The industry now says, for those of us that are in the government sector side, the public sector side of the internet and of technical uses, that it's not a matter of if something's going to happen in your system. It is truly a matter of when. And every protection possible that we can continue to provide, we're going to be needing to do that. So again, we'll be reaching out to you individually to assist with making those changes, to make sure that we're all understanding what those protocols will involve. We'll work with you specifically because your relationship into those systems is a little bit different, but this is being applied across the board, not only to folks within our organization, but we also have third-party vendors that need access into our system for various reasons, and we have to make sure that they are protecting our environment as much as we are. And so that's the reason behind what we're doing. The details of that, again, I'll share with you by forwarding an email to you, and we will commit to working with you on an individual basis to get those changes implemented and updated. But wanted to make you aware of that. You probably have seen a great deal of sidewalk work taking place around the city, most notably right across the street from us here on Line Street. We just completed about 670 linear feet of sidewalk, about another 90 feet of curb and gutter. This was specifically in relation to the sidewalk that was out of commission for a long period of time here right across from the park. The issue that we had there was a stormwater issue. We were in discussions with SCDOT about whether or not that was a responsibility of SCDOT or it was a responsibility of the city. We really were at loggerheads over reaching a decision with that, and we felt that it was in the best interest of our community that we needed to go ahead and proceed to get those repairs made. And so they have now been installed, and it looks great over there, and you'll see that our crews are out doing additional work across the city as well. We're heavily involved in sidewalk repair and replacement at this time. I want to make you aware that the election filing for districts 1, 3, 5, also for mayor and for a member of the CPW Board of Commissioners, opening for that election filing begins on July 15th at noon, and it concludes on August 15th at noon. That will be published in our local newspaper over the next couple of publications as we prepare for that. But again, wanted to make you aware that that filing does indeed begin noon, July 15th through noon on August 15th. And again, that's for districts 1, 3, 5, also for the mayor and for a commissioner on Greer CPW. Those are the things that I wanted to report to council this evening. If you have any questions about those items or any other items that appear on your agenda or that you may have general questions about, certainly make myself available as well as all of our staff.
Thank you, sir. Council will move to appointments of boards and commissions. The first of which is an opening on the Board of Architectural Review. Ms. Hyatt's term on that board expires at the end of this month, and unfortunately, we are not going to have a replacement at this point in time. But staff will continue to work to bring us a nomination. If any of you know anyone that might be capable of filling the historian position, please see Ms. McCormick or anyone on her staff in that regard. We also have an appointee to the Greenville-Spartanburg International Airport Environs Planning Commission. This is the Greenville County representative. Mr. William Andy Burley's term expires at 6/30/2019. I have spoken personally with Mr. Burley, and he wishes to continue his service on that board. I will offer that as a motion, and will accept a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to reappoint Mr. Andy Burley to the Greenville-Spartanburg International Airport Environs Planning Commission. Floor is open for any discussion or questions in that regard.
Mayor, as a matter of information, we did receive a communication from staff at GSP indicated Mr. Burley has been active on the commission, and they would certainly support a reappointment if that's council's decision.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the update. Others? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, let's move to items of old business this evening, the first of which is second and the final reading of ordinance number 19-2019. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 54, Manufactured Housing, Article 2, Manufactured Homes, Section 54 through 31, permit required, and to eliminate the annual permit fee. We got information from staff in regards to this ordinance at our last meeting. It comes as a recommendation from them. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, the second item before us this evening is the second and final reading of ordinance number 22-2019. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Alina Elmore located at 317 Parker Street from C2 to RM2. We entertained information in that regard. Ms. McCormick, is there new or additional information that we may need in regards to the second and final reading of ordinance number 22-2019?
No, sir. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to receive then.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you. Item C is the second and final reading of ordinance number 24-2019. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 38, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Boards of Architectural Review, Section 38 through 92, process to eliminate the final certification fee from the City of Greer Code of Ordinances and to transfer the fee to the comprehensive fee schedule. This came to us for first reading with a recommendation from staff. I don't know that there's any change in that regard. I'll entertain a motion to receive second reading.
So motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any new or additional information from staff in that regard? I didn't assume so. Thank you. Questions? Comments? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Item D is the second and final reading of ordinance number 25-2019. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 14 of the Building and Building Regulations, Article 1 in General, Section 14-8, occupancy permits. This is to eliminate the occupancy permit fee from the City of Greer Code of Ordinances and to transfer the fee to the comprehensive fee schedule. This comes as a recommendation in the first reading from staff. We will proceed with the second and final reading of ordinance number 25-2019. I'll entertain a motion to receive. So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council will proceed with the second and final reading of ordinance number 23-2019. This is the City of Greer budget ordinance fiscal year 2019 through 2020. It's an ordinance relating to the fiscal affairs of the City of Greer, South Carolina, making appropriations, therefore levying taxes, and to provide for an effective date. We have had the required public hearing. As you witnessed, no one spoke in favor of or opposition to ordinance 23-2019. We had an overview of the budget from the administrator and staff last week, as well as a transmittal letter. For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
I have a motion, make one of those a second, please. Someone. We got a motion and a second? Okay, thank you. Sorry. Floor is open for discussion.
I went through it and nothing really jumped out. Just one item that maybe Mr. Driggers, you can clarify under administration, page 5 of 38. Special contracts took a pretty good jump. I don't know what that's due to, but
We can share.
okay.
Because it did, absolutely.
In that particular line item, we are planning for a comp and class study, as well as contracting with the ICMA to continue our surveys of employees and city citizens. So that's included in that line item this year.
Gotcha. Just my thumbnail assessment, nothing really jumped out. It was not radically different. Some things actually went down, which caused me concern. That's not normal.
Some went up, some went down.
Some went down. The one full-time administration addition, the communications coordinator.
Yes.
How does that differ from what Steve does?
Well, one of the things that we have experienced over, I'll say specifically, about the last 4 years or so, maybe even a little bit longer, is that as we continue to look for avenues of communicating with our community, for example, our annual reports. Annual reports used to be a printed format that we would insert in a local newspaper and have distributed. It has become much more of an electronic process. This past year, we went to a full video format. Steve is extremely well qualified in those areas, but they are very, very time consuming. Social media is a large piece of what we have a great need to be communicating with our public through that resource. There are multiple social media avenues to use, and what we have found is that our city has continued to grow, the demands for communication has continued to be more demanding. I think that's the better we do, the more our community requires of us to continue to do and to do better. And so we knew that this was a position that we needed to ramp ourselves into. This particular position would not begin until January of 2020, so that we were able to fund it at 1/2 the rate during this fiscal year, and then it would fully fund following that, as we, again, ramp ourselves into it. We've had some great success with interns in that area, but interns come and go in very defined periods. We would anticipate that we will continue to use interns. It's a great resource for us. It's a great learning tool for them as well. But we have just matured to the point that we think for us to meet the expectations of our community, we need to add some additional resources.
So maybe in addition to social media, this person would kind of be the face of Greer. When like say, Channel 21 came around and wanted to talk about something?
Probably not.
No?
No, our intent is, we utilize and we're very successful in using the mayor in that capacity. I'm engaged in that capacity, and then if it's more specific to departmental operations, we put our department heads or their designated person out there. We're very intentional about who we will put out front. This person will continue to be a spokesperson for us, but I wouldn't characterize it as the face of the city.
The only other comment that I have is, of course, about the personnel budget. And I had to go all the way back to 2012 to see where it was under 60%, and then just barely. As the budget has grown in that period by about almost 68%, the personnel budget has grown just over 64%. I would think at some point there would be a diminishing return there where as our budget grows, the personnel budget almost has to become a smaller part of it.
It's actually the contrary.
I don't understand that.
Because approximately, we can kind of round that at 70%. 65% of the budget relative to personnel expenses, as we would provide for increasing our staff for a growing community, as we provide for increasing salaries for inflation over time and rewarding employees for good performance, as well as that we have the expenses related to employees that are specific to insurance and those types of things. It stays in direct proportion to the other items, which are most notably debt service, and operations. And of course, operations and personnel, those two are hand in hand. We are a service provider. That's the only product that we produce is service. And so with those ratios staying very close, as the budget continues to expand, it stays in relatively the same proportion. So we don't really get the economies of scale. What has also compounded that issue have been the issues that we've been facing annually with increases to the state retirement systems.
Well, that's what concerns me is when you add someone, you don't just add salary, you add like another 28% or so.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, if an employee were to get $400 extra in their paycheck, that $400 will cost us about $650 because of what we're doing. The other issue that can cause us some impact, we are having the greatest difficulty now in our labor market hiring part-time employees. There was a time for us that was a very viable alternative in allowing us to keep some of our overhead costs to benefits and those types of things a bit reduced. In an extremely tight labor market, those folks aren't out there. And so it's becoming more and more difficult for us to attract and find the type of employee that we would expect representing us at the city of Greer. And so as we've needed to move some of those part-time positions over the last 8 to 10 years, many of those have moved more into, instead of having 2 part-time positions, we've moved it into a full-time position because that's what's needed to attract the type of people that we want to have working here. And that has a higher cost because of the benefit.
And internships is a great alternative, especially since we have the North Greenville campus so close.
Yes.
Would be a
We
great opportunity.
regularly get interns from North Greenville, we get them from Furman, we get them from Bob Jones, we get them from Clemson regularly. And so it has been a great resource for us. We've been using them in our planning department. We've had interns in the finance area. We've had interns in recreation. We've had them at the police department. So in all of our operations, we continue to look for those opportunities because they need the experience and the credit that will provide for them, and we're able to plug them in to real-life experiences for us. Absolutely, we do not use interns to make copies and run errands. We give them the job.
Well, you would hope that maybe a few years down the road, they'd say, I'm going to go back and see if I can.
And we've had that
Full-time
happen.
job, yeah.
But yes, and that has been, it's actually occurred for us.
So, well, overall, I think it's a good budget. I don't have any real heartburn with it, other than usual. Good job.
Speaking of personnel, talking more specifically the retirement, can you give us any kind of update on what the state is doing on their end? Because, I mean, they're asking us to take a lot of the responsibility that probably should have been theirs.
They are continuing to fund the 1%. In the very first year, there was a 2% increase. They funded half of that, and we funded the other half. That is not a guaranteed refunding each fiscal year, but they have continued to keep that in their budget, so they're covering that 1%. We still have 2 more years of ramp up, so it's another 1% next year and another 1% the year after that. Employees are frozen at this point, I think at 9 and 10 point, and 9.75. So employees are capped out, but the employer portion of that, again, I think it was a 5 or 6 year ramp up, and we still have 2 years left on it.
What's that going to take us to as far as percentage?
It gets us relatively high. It takes us, ultimately, we will be at 18.5%, 18.56% in the South Carolina retirement system and 21.24% in the police officers retirement system. And so, 18.5% of one salary and almost 21.25% of the others. That's a large, obviously, that is a large percentage that when we hire an employee for $25,000, we know that another 20% is required just to pay the required retirement.
What is the thinking at the 2-year, the last wrap-up period? What is the thinking after that, at the 3rd year? Is
It's the state legislature, and we know that at that point, they could step back and want to review it again. I do know that they are monitoring it very, very closely.
Will it be fully funded at that point?
I can't say that it would be fully funded because I've not seen anything that they're reflecting it being fully funded. It's an actuarial relationship that has to happen as they look at the number of participants in the program, age of people in the program, when they anticipate those retirements to occur, and what the life expectancy is of those retirees over the plan. To my knowledge and what I've seen is that the liability of that is still greater than the income level that it's producing. David, are you aware of any different to that?
Yes, sir. What he has stated is accurate. The last review that I've had from the state legislature, from the state treasurer's office in regards to retirement system is when you look at the actuarial study, there's increases get it to a level where they are starting to pay that deficit down, and there's a payback period of, if I remember correctly, 15 to 18 years, and so it won't be fully funded for another 15 plus years. And then at that point, and that's when I raised my hand. I was like, well, what are you going to do with the rates then? And because you would expect the rates to come back down, and they did not have an answer at this point because it is dependent on the legislature.
Because they ain't gonna never lower them.
But it is 12, 15, 18 year payback period. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it is a number of years into the future.
I know with our accounting practices, we're required to fund
Correct.
everything. Does that not apply to the state?
Well, we don't have to fund everything. We have to fund that year's actuarial value.
Right, exactly.
And that's what they are doing. They're ramping up to be able to do that, but they're actually ramping up beyond that. So when you look at the actuarial values, they typically divide it over a 30-year period, and the retirement system, they've backed it down to a shorter period. So they're actually paying more than what would normally be required based on the normal standard of, 30-year payback.
And they just kind of refuse to start when they should have.
It's a little
It was a problem that was building for a long
big,
time.
yeah.
It truly was. I mean, those of us that have been watching it, it was clear that it was underfunded. Nobody wants to, change rates, and no one wants to pay more into the system. But I think they got to the tipping point that the deficit was rising at a rate higher and faster than they knew that they would be able to fund. So they stepped back and made a decision to adjust the rates.
Now, going back to, like he says about the percentage for the personnel, one of the things I think is so critical is that, like you said, that you bring in the right people, because if you bring in the wrong personnel, that could wind up costing us even more. Because as I read the newspaper and watch the news around here in the upstate alone, there's some cities right here that's got serious problems, and they got serious problems because of the personnel that they brought in and placed in those positions. And I just think you guys have done an outstanding job of bringing in the right people, and it's hard in this job market because it's so tight.
It is. It is a very difficult environment to attract employees, but we have a great reputation in the community. Folks who know about us are willing to change, because we don't hire folks who are unemployed. I mean, we could, but there just aren't unemployed folks looking for the work that we do. And so we have to attract folks who work somewhere else. And we've been very, very successful in attracting those folks because we have a good reputation among our own employees, that we treat our employees fairly. We provide a competitive wage, an extraordinary benefit package that makes us an attractive employer. And I think that we do need to maintain that so that we can remain competitive to get the best people who do what we do. Thank you.
In that same vein, before we wrap this discussion up, I want to speak, I think, on perhaps of all of council and thanking staff for bringing this budget to us this year. I think in some regards we may have gotten a little spoiled over the last several years in terms of the amount of time that we have to spend with the budget, knowing that we're going to be brought a balanced budget, and we're going to be brought a budget that has been reviewed not only by administration but by the individual department heads and members of their staffs as well too. And I know that involves many hours, often late hours and sometimes early hours, putting these things together, and it is a moving target up until the day it appears before us. And there's always a scramble with some last minute changes I am aware of, and it's like making sausage. We enjoy the final product, but we don't see everything that goes into it on the other side. And that it probably is a good thing. I suspect we could muck up a budget in a New York minute. So hats off to those of you, which is all of our city staff, for participating in this budget. I also would just like to offer to council that while we spent a fair amount of time last year talking about the two-year budget, we really didn't spend a whole lot of time this year. Council made it clear that for the time being we were going to stick with an annual budget ordinance. But I will say this on behalf of our staff. They did an amazingly accurate job of forecasting in the two-year budget, and there would have been very, very few adjustments that we would have had to have made in this new budget. That is one of the reasons that this year's budget was possibly a little quicker turnaround than we have had in the past, simply because we had such a solid base of information, and at the time that our department heads and financial staff and Mr. Grigger spent on that forecasting that was done in that two-year budget was proven to be fairly accurate. Well, it was proven to be very accurate, and so one of the things that I would urge us to at least keep an open mind to is at some point in time in the future that we may want to revisit that and take a look at it again at some point in the future. With that, we'll entertain final comments before I call the question on the final reading of ordinance number 23-2019. Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, let's move to items of new business, the first of which is the first and final reading of Resolution 13-2019. This is a resolution declaring the city's intent to reimburse itself for certain expenditures made prior to the city's consummation of a federally tax-exempt financing. Mr. David Seifert joins us this evening to give us information in that regard.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Under the law as it pertains to borrowing money for capital purchases, the law does allow for you to purchase some of those assets as long as within 60 days you declare your intent in the future borrowing, which will be the lease purchase ordinance that follows this. So that is our future borrowing of money that we will be borrowing here very shortly. But it gives us that 60-day window of buying assets that as long as we designate them under this formal resolution, that we can then pre-buy those assets before the borrowing is in place. These assets, in particular, we have some assets at the Center for the Arts that were contained in the construction budget that have already been installed and paid for, that were budgeted for in the fiscal year 20 budget in the lease purchase capital budget. So we need to request your approval of this resolution to be able to reimburse ourselves for those purchases that we have already made that are slated for next year's budget.
Council, go ahead. Council, this comes to you as a recommendation from staff. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So motion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for questions. Mr. Seifert? Comments? Discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, item D this evening is the first and final reading of Resolution 14-2019. This is a resolution authorizing a lease purchase agreement, Series 2019, in the principal amount of not exceeding $1,810,898, relating to the financing of equipment for municipal purposes, authorizing the execution and delivery of documents, including the lease agreement and other related matters. Mr. Seifert?
Again, thank you, Mayor and Council. This resolution authorizes the administrator and other designees to move forward with proceeding and borrowing the money for the lease purchase resolution, or for the lease purchase that is contained in the fiscal year 20 budget, the capital equipment fund that you just passed, and then goes hand in hand with the reimbursement resolution that was just voted.
This comes as a recommendation from staff. I'll entertain a motion to proceed with final reading of Resolution 14-2019.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any questions for Mr. Seifert? Discussion? Comments? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Thank you, sir. First reading of ordinance number 26-2019 is an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an economic development agreement by and between the City of Greer, South Carolina, and the Project Freeman Farms with respect to infrastructure credits to be applied against fee in lieu of tax payments related to certain investments in the city and other related matters. Mr. Reno Deaton joins us for an explanation of ordinance number 26-2019.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Thank you. This proposed agreement comes before you tonight after having discussed terms in executive session, terms relative to the enacting inducement ordinance resolution, that you had passed at a prior meeting, as a result of a negotiated agreement between city administration and Prospect with the assistance of their respective attorneys.
Thank you, sir. I'll entertain a motion to receive first reading of ordinance number 26-2019. So moved.
Second.
And a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions of Mr. Deaton? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Last item before us this evening, council, is seeking approval of grant application recommendations. The Greer Accommodations Tax Committee met Thursday, June the 13th, 2019, to discuss the applications received for grants from the state accommodations tax received for fiscal year June 30, 2018. The committee respectfully submits the attached recommendations for council's consideration and approval. Mr. Seifert.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It appears that third time's a charm. We're finally able to give away the money we've been trying to give away for a while. So I come to you tonight on behalf of the committee to present their recommendations to you, requesting your approval. We have $1,360 that is recommended for the Greer Station Association, and $6,375 that is recommended for Greer Cultural Arts Council.
Council, two recommendations before you this evening. You see those. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion or questions. Mr. Seifert, is the Greer Cultural Arts Council, the entertainers and artists, is any of that funding, do you know if any of that funding is related to the grand opening we'll be having at the Cultural Arts Center, or is this programming throughout the year?
The majority of it's for the grand opening.
Thank you. Others? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Mr. Driggers, any items for executive session?
I do not have any.
Council? With that, we stand adjourned.